Hello, my name is Jack. I'm currently reading The Lost Girls, written by Scroll. Okay. Um, this is chapter 5. I still have to read the prologue. I'm going to do that right after I get done reading this, and then I'll upload them both at the same time. Anyway, so I've been reading this story, scrutinizing, nitpicking at it, and trying to give a fair review. Today I'll be joined by Lightning Dust. I wasn't last night when I recorded chapter 4, or the comment. I completely forgot. So, let me get into reading. After being invited by them when they finished their work at the carnival, I continued to learn fascinating things about my new group of friends here, such as them not only being fantastic flyers as well, but equally daring. Okay. This latest observation caused me to replay the things I had learned thus far. Not only had I run into carnies at Pony Island who worked in various venues there, including a rock opera magic show concert, but they also were very good and daring flyers. Where were these ponies when I actually sought out such potential to join the washouts earlier? I personally marveled at what eccentric and eclectic ponies these were. Seriously, I had no idea that I would run into more ponies with very similar interests as me on that night. That wording right there feels awkward, almost wrong to me. Like it would be bittersweet with similar interests to me on that night. It seemed an even crueler irony that I found them only after I was forced to leave the washouts myself. What a vicious taunt. At least I had fun with them on that night. It also made sense why they had sought me out, if indeed our interests were so compatible on many fronts. Even then, those mares were practicing in ways that I had done with the rest of the washouts, such as daringly diving into and out of storm clouds. One difference, however, was the fact that they were doing it exceptionally well, even scary well. Like them, I dove into the storm clouds too. I was buffeted by strong winds and stinging rain which made a tapping sound as it splashed on my leather jacket. Yet I continued to fly through it so naturally. Lightning and thunder flashed and rolled all around me, yet I was strangely calm within it. I was one with the elements and the storm, especially on that night, since the turbulent weather seemed to poetically match my inner mindset at the time. I felt myself sink into a curiously peaceful trance as I continued to fly through the storm. It's sort of like the reader is not trusted to put that together. But these mares dove and spun all around me. I sometimes saw them carry the storm with them in their wake. Sometimes those clouds spun into miniature tornadoes because they dove past me in a spin. The spinning clouds chased after them, which sometimes accelerated by combining the windstorms that the others also created. There was something so eerie about their mad cackle in the storm. I didn't know what it was. These mares, there was just something off about them. Their laughter sounded more like the edge of madness. Okay. The irony to that was the Wonderbolts and I had been accused... the Washouts and I had been accused of that before. Many had said we were insane too. Usually we either accepted that claim with an innocent shrug or passionately embraced it. Considering all that, what would it take for insane ponies to consider yet another group even more insane? Right. Another thing about them that took me quite some time to identify was they were utterly fearless as they did these daring stunts. The washouts and I faced our fears and leaned into them, but these mad mares didn't sound like they had fear to begin with. They were rather delighted in the storm, or perhaps another level. Whatever it was, it felt primal and dangerous somehow. Observing this fascinated me as much as it secretly scared me. There was also an instinct in me that begged me to realize I was treading on more dangerous ground with them than usual. And I was not a mare who typically ignored her instincts, because it was usually why I survived my daring stunts so well, aside from my highly honed athletic skills. And typically the only ponies that are in danger are any that aren't you. As time went on, I couldn't put my hoof on as to why, but they seemed honestly very surprised I could keep up with them. Likewise, I was surprised I had found others able to keep up with me. The next thing they did was they dove and curved between the dangerous twists and turns of Ghastly Gorge. I had done that before as well, except the nighttime part was new for me. With the darker conditions, this was 10 times more dangerous. Yet these mares spun and curved around there as if this was nothing to them. I gradually began to realize that all I had to do was simply follow the sound of their wake, and I could move through this gorge with similar ease. That was a case of the blind following the not-so-blind for some reason? Or no, I read that wrong, because it was meant to be a question. Was that a case of the blind following the not-so-blind for some reason? Like me, they had no trouble dodging the sudden bites of the giant eels that shot out some of the holes in the gorge in an attempt to consume us. These mares even playfully and madly laughed as they twirled around them and kicked off their scaly hides. As for me, I simply dodged them. My instincts kicked in as sharply as ever, especially when I perceived danger. Later, they upped the ante again by diving within one of the holes up the... Oh, let me try that again. Later, they upped the ante again by diving within one of the holes of the gorge. In there, they should quickly be utterly blind, even if this was done in the daylight instead. I could hear their laughter start to fade within that tunnel while I skidded to a stop in midair. Wow, were they really mad? I was daring, but what they were doing was downright suicidal. You're one to talk, Lightning Dust. Those stunts in the washouts, very easily could be called the same. Come on, Lightning, one of them cried out from within with an echo. Yeah, agreed another. Leap before you look, remember? Leap before I look. Yeah, right. There was no way I would be able to... Yeah, right. There was no way I would be able to see in there anyway. I would be as blind as a bat in there. I heard their laughter continue to recede from me. That, at least, meant they were still alive enough to make a sound at all. How were they doing this? Oh, well, I gotta say, it's fascinating. Just gotta pause for a sec. Not that I am, at all disrupted from immersion. Exactly. But Lightning Dust's character has been about taking risks and pushing herself. And not backing down. Not from anything. Being arrogant, really. So... then the idea that this is giving her pause, that without having to have my hands held within the narrative, gives me an idea then of just how intense this must actually look for her. Anyway, I had never had any pony else show me up like this at my own game. I never before felt my courage and daringness being taunted as if I were the coward. Usually other ponies looked up to me and asked how I was doing what I did. This whole experience felt utterly surreal. Was I dreaming? I took in a deep breath, then slowly let it out, thus calming myself down. Leap before I look, I reminded myself. Okay. Taking a deep breath and helping to calm yourself down, that's actually the opposite of leaping before you look. I repeated that in my head like a mantra, even as I finally dove into the tunnel that they dove in earlier. This was so crazy. I might as well be diving into the solid earth at full speed. If I truly wanted to kill myself, surely there might be more glorious ways to go out. Panic tried to assail me as that black hole got closer and closer. But before I met it, I closed my eyes entirely and forced myself to calm down. I knew I could not see in there anyway, so I might as well close my eyes. Instead of that, I sank into a trance and focused more on my other senses, including my unusually acute instincts. I felt the temperature change when I was in the tunnel. I heard the sound of my wing flaps echo in the tunnel all around me. When I noticed that, it suddenly occurred to me how I could track where I was in there. Blind as a bat, I may have been in there, but bats could track their progress in other ways. I hope you're not suggesting sonar. I dove, I climbed, I zigged and zagged. I heard as I dodged stalactites and stalagmites. They whooshed past me, each reminding me I just dodged yet another chance at death. Wow. That was actually quite difficult to read. It didn't flow very well, I'm saying. Come on, Lightning. Join us. Be one of us, echoed a mare's voice from somewhere ahead. I mostly tried to ignore them since I was fighting for my life there. There was a thread of shame in the pit of my stomach that they were doing this so effortlessly, but I shall not be left behind. I am Lightning Dust, one of the most daring ponies in Equestria. Huh, she didn't credit herself with being the most daring, huh? I focused with all of my might, but fear climbed within me as I felt the fact that the cave was getting narrower. I could hear the echo of my own wing flaps getting closer. I could hear myself dodging other objects that were closer. This was really dangerous. How were these mares doing this so easily? Good question. Then, finally, my left wing clipped with the edge of the cave wall. This knocked that wing back and injured it. I ended up diving down in a spin, screaming until I got impaled by one of the many unseeable stalagmites. I couldn't believe this. I just utterly couldn't believe this. Me, of all mares, one of the most daring I've ever known, was going to die in these caverns. How did it come to this? Did I want to die? Did I want to abandon my sister after all? I was shocked to realize I felt no pain at first, but it gradually did come up. When it did, it seemed to have no end to the amount it scaled up. A humming sound by several of the mares I had been chasing rose around me. When it did, an eerie dark purple glow ignited within several dark crystals embedded in the walls. At first I wondered if that was the secret to their success earlier, but no. If they were using that before, I should have easily noticed this light stand out in darkness that was pitch black, even with my eyes closed. I mean, if it was pitch black, then there was no light, so in darkness anyway. I heard their humming, but I didn't see them, all except one of them, Demise. She alone approached close enough for me to see her in this dim light. Oh, now it's not pitch black. Okay. We are very impressed with you, Miss Dust, Demise said as she crouched down and gently moved a hoof through my mane tenderly. To keep up with us as you are. As you have, I think. A mere mortal. Nope, never mind. As you are. You were right. To keep up with us as you are, a mere mortal. How much greater will you be if you become one of us? Who are you all? I asked, as I struggled hard to avoid screaming in pain. What are you? I desperately amended. I feel like if she's in pain and she's impaled, there should be some other physical signs. Struggling to breathe. There's no description of blood anywhere. For a fic that has been marked as mature so far, there's nothing that really justifies the rating. We are the apex predators, Demise answered me smoothly and soothingly, like a mother trying to calm down her distraught foal. We are the greatest champions of the night goddess. I furrowed my eyebrows as I continued to struggle to repress a pained grimace as I asked, Princess Luna, you speak for... I was interrupted by a bunch of disgusted and loathing hisses all around me that also briefly interrupted their humming. But when that happened, the dark purple glow of various crystals around us started to fade. In response, Demise quickly passed the glare out at unseen ponies around us for this. When she did, the humming picked up again. When that happened, the glow of the crystals returned to their previous strength. Then Demise looked back at me with a shake of her head and said, No, we don't speak for that foul abomination, that corrupted puppet of Celestia. I tried to gasp, but I ended up coughing out blood. There we go, I mentioned the blood. Coughing out blood instead. Still, I was determined to speak my mind, so I rounded up my remaining strength again and told her Luna isn't Celestia's puppet, she is her sister. She was Nightmare Moon, Demise cried out at me in outrage. Wow, I did a terrible job of acting that out, thus losing her cool for the first time I had ever observed in her. The true goddess of the night. She tilted her head at me as she asked me, Don't you think it's a little suspicious for her to be this all-powerful alicorn who let nothing step in her way? Then poof, one zap of the rainbow beam of the elements of harmony. And now she's suddenly this sniveling and groveling slave who pretends to be Celestia's sister? That's quite a couple of assumptions you've made there. She shook her head. No pony suddenly switches moral views like that so drastically without a very unusual reason. The rainbow beams of the elements of harmony did this to her. It is a concealing It is concealing and containing our beloved goddess. It is forcing her to act like this pathetic pony ever since that day, and secretly doing so to an utterly unwilling target, I might add. Oh boy. Huh? Okay. Yeah, if you look at it from Nightmare Moon's point of view, I could see that. I was confused. This was hard to accept. Felt like arguing with her, but my senses were dimming. Felt dizzy. My vision was blackening. My hearing was fading. I was losing strength. As I started to die, I did so with the realization that I genuinely was following a bunch of utterly mad ponies. Demise leaned down and whispered into my ear, "I can save your life, little pony. If I do, you can say goodbye to the life you knew before. A better one awaits thee." I don't understand why thee is there when it has not really featured any other part of her speech patterns. Weakly, I looked at her. I didn't know what to make of that statement. I mean, now I guess it is cryptic. Why did you struggle so hard to live before? Demise continued to ask me as she whispered into my ear. Whatever it was before, does it, in any way, continue to linger? Why did you cling to life? Because I wanted to live. Why fight, she asked. Because I enjoyed a challenge. I liked the struggle. Demise pulled the knife up from seemingly out of nowhere. She grasped it with a wing and pulled it to a hoof. Along the way, I had to remind myself that she was a trained magician. Okay, so what? She's a trained magician. That doesn't mean you should be comfortable where they're holding a knife near you. If you have any reason to continue to live, drink this, she offered before startling me by slicing below her own left hoof. And as she did, she hovered that hoof over my own mouth and seemed to drip her blood out, drip her blood on my face on purpose for some reason. To have you drink it? I thought that she made that kind of clear, actually. Drink, Demise commanded me. Drink the nectar of life. Drink the nectar of death. Eternal life and eternal death. What was I supposed to make of all this? Okay, call me weird, but I'm thinking she wants you to drink. Drink now, she commanded me again. What do you have to lose at this point besides your life? Well, I guess she had me there. I had no idea how a pony's blood was supposed to act like some kind of healing potion. But she seemed weirdly confident that it could help. If I didn't do this, I was going to die. Going to die. Was that what I wanted? I briefly considered the contents of my life. The struggles I went through and the struggles I wanted to continue doing, most of which were interrupted by my sister. And I say were because struggles, a word that appears twice, is the subject to which the word is actually connected. So, were. I gave up a lot for her, practically my whole life for her. I couldn't really say I did it without some hesitation or a sense of resentment, but the fact remained that I did it anyway. She needed me, and that hasn't changed. If I died that night, she may die too, of a broken heart, if nothing else. Bitter resentment clung to my heart, but so does a righteous cry of outrage. Does or did? Because bitter resentment clung to my heart. That feels like past tense, and then it goes, comma, present tense. But so does a righteous cry of outrage. I can't let her down. Not after I've gotten this far. Not after all I gave up to get here. Okay. Leap before I look. Greedily, I scooped up her leg and dragged it to my mouth, where I proceeded to feed. You called it feed instead of drink. Interesting. A distinct metallic taste assaulted my mouth, but it curiously left a surprisingly intense and addictive aftertaste. Before I could stop myself, I found myself gorging on her blood. Weirdly, Demise seemed aroused by this, yet it didn't seem to strengthen her in the least. As one would expect, draining her blood did seem to weaken her significantly. She was clearly woozy at that point. That's a strange combination of conditions. I only paused my drinking for a brief moment when a pulse of pain shot through me. My body tried to reject the foreign substance as if suddenly realizing that this blood was actually poison, not a healing potion. And yet, instead of gagging, I ended up drinking even more. I couldn't stop myself. one of us, the others chanted like this was some kind of dark ritual to them. I felt my heart pumping fast as if racing desperately to resist the poisonous substance that flooded my veins. I even felt every vein of my body pulse too. I started to notice detailed sensations I never noticed before, like the sweat of the others, demise most of all. My body screamed at me to stop, yet I could not. I couldn't seem to control my actions anymore. It was as if some ravenous animal had possessed and taken over my body. I felt like I was floating off to the side, casually observing this as if my body was somebody else's. One of us, the chant continued. As it did, it seemed to synchronize with my ever more desperate heartbeat. My heart struggled with all of its might to resist the substance that was killing my body. I couldn't stop. Did I want to? What was happening to me? Then, suddenly, my heart stopped. That last pulse rippled through my body like a last gasp of life. In that same instance, I think you meant instant, the chant of the others also suddenly ceased as if they realized what had happened. As my consciousness faded away, the greatly weakened Demise leaned down and whispered into my ear, "Say your goodbyes to the light, my new friend. For when you next awaken, you will be reborn with new Vampony eyes." She paused again, then said, "Welcome to the Shadow Bolts." I died. Okay, interesting. Not completely faithful to the Lost Boys. I don't know, it feels like that just gives it away. Like, I know we I as the reader already know from chapter 1 that she had become a Vampony. It just strikes me that there was this opportunity for her to not, like in the Lost Boys, not really know what she actually was yet, not be completely aware of it. You know, like the transformations are not even all that quick. She's got an appetite. Like, it felt, in this case, a lot like breakneck pacing. Including, like I said, back in chapter 4, there was no real... She never really dealt with any inner conflict about taking this mare up at her invitation or any of that. She just suddenly, in the same chapter, is at the show. I never even got the impression from the dialogue that preceded it that the show in question was to take place that night, but it did. There's a lot of sort of confusing elements to this story, I feel. But I don't know, I'm really working on it. I'm really trying to understand everything about this story. But there are points where where good opportunities for exploring conflict, for exploring complex feelings within the mare like Lightning Dust, where just it wasn't elaborate. Also, just to point this out, it was a tunnel, but it was only ever described as a tunnel, and except for, hold on. I dove, I climbed, I zigged, and I zagged. I heard as I dodged stalactites and stalagmites. They whooshed past me each. But even so, the location is still kind of a void in description. Now, I get for her it essentially was, because it was described essentially, or largely, as being pitch black. But when I say void, there's not even any, like, temperature change, okay? Did it go up? Did it go down? Did the area get more damp? Was sound echoing more? Were their voices reverberating all throughout, disorienting you? There's so little real flavor to this. It felt like this was rushed through to get to the punchline of, like, just being impaled, drinking Demise's blood, and beginning the conversion into a vampire. So, I guess I'd have to say it feels a little disappointing. Yeah, That's what I'm looking for. Alright, so anyway,